Welcome to the final day of week 3 of spring, which it does bear repeating that the conclusion of today's games will mark the halfway point of the split and thus the end of our first round robin. Emily, hi. Mark, can you believe it that we are here at this point?
No.
No, it feels so early.
3 weeks in, halfway through, what is that? It's a madness.
Yeah, and I mean, LA weather doesn't help, right? I feel like I don't know what time of year it is, the time in the split, and I need a bit of help. So let's go ahead and take a look at how things have been shaking out, because after our Saturday full of some intense matchups, our standings show just that, because we're approaching the halfway point of the split. Teams are starting to pull ahead from the pack. Cloud9 are standing alone up at first place, followed by 100 Thieves and TSM together at second, with Dignitas just behind them in fourth, and Evil Geniuses and Team Liquid tied up for fifth. I know yesterday we had so many close placements in the standings between the teams that were facing off, and it was a delight to see. So speaking of that, let's go ahead and talk about how we ended up with these standings, where yesterday we had that discussion of the potential four-way tie for first place. And I want to start with you, Emily, and my question is TL okay?
It depends on what you mean by okay. I think the most surprising thing to me about Team Liquid is when we talked about them coming out of the lock-in tournament, we were like, this is a team that has a really good idea of what they want to do. They're cross-mapping really well. They have a really good understanding of cross-map trading. They're able to transfer advantages that they have in bot side to the rest of the map. And we've seen them struggle when we've then swapped to having them get advantages topside and trying to translate that to the rest of the map. So I actually do think TL will be okay. But right now, I think we are seeing them trying to deal with how they transfer that topside priority into other map advantages and struggling a bit more than when they were focusing a lot more on bot side.
It is interesting we're talking about how quickly the split is going, and being that we are only 3 weeks into the regular split, it means it was only 3 weeks ago that we saw Team Liquid absolutely dominating and lock-in, just showing how much these teams are evolving over time. Speaking of evolving and bringing new things to the table, we do have to check in on Dignitas and the Dardoch situation.
No, he brought something repeat to the table. He was supposed to bring a new dish every meal, and this time he repeated the cane. I think you could argue if he went red cane, because there are two different forms for him. Maybe this isn't a situation where it was actually two different champions, but he did end up going the Shadow Assassin form again. And overall, Dignitas struggled as a whole. I don't think it's fair to blame Dardoch repeating his champion as the issue, or even necessarily the cane itself, though it's definitely going to have a hard time with the amount of CC and peel that's available with the Lulu and stuff like that. Overall, Dignitas just seems to struggle with the fact that Aframu was on TK. He's their big playmaker. He's the one who gets a lot of things going in the early game, and it definitely felt like with him not having that to kind of jumpstart his team, they struggled to make plays, and C9 just hopped all over him.
And going into this week, Dignitas were definitely one of the teams we were keeping our eyes on most, being one of two teams that had the 3-0 week 2. The other one high being TSM.
Right, and I think when you first thought of TSM at the beginning of the split, right, people were super sad about them. They started off 0-2. They got a couple wins, but they didn't look so good. Now they're on a 6-game win streak, and not only are they on that win streak, the way they're winning their games are actually really clean as well. I'm not going to say we're ready for Worlds or anything like that, but, it gives some hope to see teams play well. Their playstyle is very one-dimensional, but at least they do it well. I'm not going to blame a team for winning. Granted, yeah, I'm not going to blame a team for winning. That's good. Keep it up.
Oh, what were you going to say?
I know. You sound like you rethought that.
I was just going to say that, there's more than one way to win, but at the moment they're winning. Let's just keep at that, and then they can explore other ways to win.
And I will say that does feel like a very Bjerg approach. Like, if there's one thing Bjerg always wanted to get right, it was like kind of the fundamentals when he was playing the game and like learning champs and stuff. So I think you can kind of see his influence there. Like, okay, we're going standard control mage top, blind pick / weak side top laner. Like mid's going to be the control, bot's going to have some playmaking. It does feel kind of like a Bjerg's influence on the team's play style right now.
Early on in the season, Mark saying that losing is not a play style when it comes to describing TSM. Now we're talking about their win streak that they have been on. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other leaderboards. In this case, the Samsung SSD Fast 5, where week 3 has given us quite a few shakeups. Starting with Fake God, rocketing to the top ahead of Alfari at a blistering 9:47 seconds to 100 CS.
Yeah, they had that one game where I believe it was against FlyQuest where I think that these numbers are coming from. Having it under 10 minutes, though, is pretty nuts. And I'm happy for both FakeOdd and Saligo to be recognized here because I feel like a lot of people had questions about them coming into the split. And it's really nice that we have these pop-off games that we can point to and be like, you know, these players are still improving in the LCS.
So I noticed two things when I look at this. Number one, there are 4 out of 5, Cloud9 members on here. I don't know which one's missing, but let's not worry about that one. And secondly, don't take what you saw there as too much. Like getting level 6 first is kind of very whatever, and like getting 10k gold first is very whatever. It's not like indicative of like player skill, but yeah, 4 out of 5.
Yeah, Fudge Detractors, that is not a good point to make that he's not on the SSD Fast 5 leaderboard.
It's only because it's not Valentine's Day anymore. We're not allowed to talk about chocolate. But I do want to get you guys all talking a bit more. I want my brain rather to grow bigger. So let's move on to our next segment. I mean, whether you are a support on the roam or a jungler on the prowl, one of the most simultaneously frustrating and satisfying things in League of Legends is a well-played gank. So to give us some lessons on how to effectively tilt the opponent, Emily, Hi, and Mark Z are taking us to gank you, and we're kicking things off with Emily here right at the start.
Yeah, so I'm sure people expect me to pick a jungler, but I didn't. I actually picked Sword Art from yesterday because I really liked this mid lane roam. I thought it was really crucial in, you know, getting PoE ahead in this lane. I also think that when you have a support like Sword Art who is good at engages, who has typically really good roam timing, and your communication has improved as TSM's has over the past couple of weeks, unlocking that support from the bot lane can be really crucial in getting your team ahead.
Yeah, I think support roams are a huge part of a lot of ganks in competitive play because, you know, off reset timings and these kinds of things, you can find windows. A great example of that is also from mine, which is the Team Liquid game yesterday versus EG. There were a ton of ganks up into the top side, and I really like the idea of attacking your win condition here. You know, you have the Camille into Gnar. That can get pretty tough for Gnar, especially if you get repeat kills. The first one he can TP back to, you kill him twice. It's going to be huge for setting the Gnar behind and give Camille pressure the entire game. And, you know, good for Core JJ getting out of lane and being able to make these kinds of plays happen. But at this point, okay, that's 3 kills in a row. They still keep going up there. They had multiple roams up to the top side. They kept going up there with everything they had. And after a little bit, it's like you're getting diminished returns on your investment. There was a time that came even after that replay where they were diving the inner turret to try and kill him while Drake was up. And it's like, okay, you already have the lead. It's not going to get that much better for Camille at this point. You need to start spreading her around. So have her go mid and get some kills mid. Just contest that dragon with the fact that you're much stronger at this point in the game. There were a lot of macro mistakes that they made after getting a huge lead from good ganks, and it felt like that was all they wanted to do the entire game.
Right. It's one of those things where I've had experiences where you camp top lane, and a lot of top laners don't really know how to extend that lead. You either have two options. You extend your lead to the other lanes, meaning you teleport bottom or you teleport mid or tower dive mid, or you just keep split pushing bottom and force multiple members of the enemy team to come to you while your team is doing things elsewhere. And he didn't really do that well. Whether that's his play or color or not, I'm not sure. But top laners, when you get ahead, do one of two things. Gank mid lane / bot, or keep pushing top lane away from the objective and force multiple people to you. If you can't tower dive your guy after diving him 4 times on your own, you probably shouldn't keep playing that way, you know? You got to be able to extend your lead.
I mean, kind of diving into that just a little bit more, because we have seen the Ignite Camille come out in a few situations where it's been punished. And in this case, Mark, it felt like, yes, it was working out effectively in the beginning, but as you all noted, that there was some struggle in trying to convert that into leads in other areas. What are your thoughts so far on the fact that this is something that's been brought to the table a lot, trying to have that top side presence, but we haven't necessarily seen the Ignite Camille in its full capacity and fully affecting the rest of the game?
I mean, this is a good example of when it kind of works out. I mean, there was also the fact that he was the rune changing one. I can't remember the name. I'm blanking on it.
Omnistone.
Omnistone. Yeah, he was also Omnistone.
Bin. Throwbacks to Bin at Worlds.
Yeah, and it looked really good. I think, you know, to High's point, it was less of a champion, rune, and summoner choice so much as like what you do when you get those leads by hard camping that lane. You know, at one point it was Triforce to not even a full item. I think he had like plated steel caps and component, you know, and at that point, your Camille's fine. And to High's point, if you can't kill that person or at least take the turret in front of him, you got to start looking at other options.
Fair enough. Hi, I know you've got another gank for us to look at here.
Right. So actually, my gank isn't a good gank. It's one of those ones where I don't want to happen. So FlyQuest recently just lost a fight at Rift Herald here, and all of them are dead except for these two. They go for this gank, which I think is fine. They got the flash, but they keep going. Yes, Diamond missed his skill jump. Even had he hit it, yeah, Fake Out dies, but they lose 2 members for that. It's one of those things when I'm playing a solo queue, I just prefer them not to have come to my lane at all, because what had ended up happening is that it works out worse for me. I'd rather just not have had this play happen, and I've been perfectly fine just farming. But since I have to follow my teammate with their plays, it ended up getting me killed too, and it's just like, I wish you had not come at all in the first place.
We got to learn lessons from the mistakes too, right? When moving forward. These are all different examples of what we've seen, the ganks and how effective or ineffective they can be. Emily, I just want to come back to you for a moment because before we saw TSM actually on the Rift, you had called out the fact that we needed to see Sword Art making plays across the map. How satisfying was that to you to get to see him a bit more in that form and that style that you want from him on TSM?
I mean, it was cool. Like, this is, like I said yesterday, this is why you kind of get Sword Art. And I think that a lot of every single one of TSM's early plays, right? Like, they didn't, I think the cool thing actually we saw from TSM yesterday as well is that they didn't force early plays. They went for them when they could, but they were also really comfortable in that composition to just sit back and keep scaling as well. So we didn't see a lot of the same kind of, I guess, desperation we saw from some of their playmaking earlier in the split. And I think it just honestly points to a continued increased communication on the team.
I just want to say I thought it was funny from that segment that we had 3 clips of basically
no junglers.
supports. No junglers gank. I mean, I guess Santorum was in a couple of mine, but otherwise it was all supports we were talking about. So I don't know what that says about where our eyes are, but yeah, it was just hilarious to see.
Supports, baby, making the plays across the entire map. As far as Countdown, we're going to be stepping away, but in a few, there is more Countdown coming up. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the LCS Countdown. We've got Dignitas facing off against TSM very, very soon. But before we go into that matchup, we have noticed some really strong level 1 plays popping up in the league, and I wanted to take a look at some of the standouts that the team are about to break out. Take it away, Mark.
I love this level 1 starting out with 100 Thieves versus CLG. It's one where both teams are actually playing really intelligently. CLG has probably noticed that 100 Thieves, whether through scrims or on stage, likes going for delayed invades, so they drop 2 wards in the river. Meanwhile, 100 Thieves, using the power of Syndra level 1, shove the Orianna back to buy space out of vision to sneak into this brush, which can often surprise people if you ever lose mid control. What's nice, though, is that because they have the ward, CLG's actually brush camping and waiting for the delayed invade to kill whoever comes. But once again, another outplay by 100 Thieves where they sweep the ward, and someone yanks Closer back. Someone communicated, Closer, do not go in that way. They are waiting to kill us. So instead, they go through the river, take the longer path for the blue buff invade through that ramp. And it looks like they're going to be able to secure it, but CLG, once again, they're a little bit ahead. They also have the Gragas down here. They pulled Finn to make sure that they cannot lose this blue buff invade, and it forces 100 Thieves back. But once again, that still comes at a cost because the Gragas actually has to TP up to the top side. And so even though there was no first blood, there were no flashes, no summoners, nothing to really catch your eye, that was actually such an insanely intelligent level 1 by both teams in terms of pre-planning and reacting to what the other person was doing. And as a coach, I just love when I see really cool pre-planned things. And whoever, whether it's Zix on 100 Thieves, Moon on CLG, or one of the players, whoever's coming up with these are doing so good. CLG has the best level 1s in the league right now.
Yeah, I mean, with that being said, what are your thoughts on the fact that CLG have been using these level 1 ganks to try and have an effect on the earlier game, especially when going against teams that are perceived to be pretty difficult competition for them?
When I look at level 1s, I think of 2 things. Number 1, am I the weaker team? If so, I would like to do a level 1 because more often than not, they're kind of cheesy. Yeah, they can be strategic, but you're trying to get an advantage that normally you don't want to do because they can backfire really hard, right? If you 4-man or 3-man face check a bush and die, your game is over. I've experienced that before, and you generally don't want to do that against weaker teams. But against stronger teams, it's good to go for. So I like that teams do that, but I don't want them to do it every single game, since if it becomes like a thing that you're known for, you're going to get punished for it sooner rather than later. And I guess it's fine to get punished in the regular season game rather than like a playoff game or a world game, like giving up 2 kills to Fnatic level 1 during a world match or something like that. You probably shouldn't do that. That's my recommendation to the teams. But keep doing it for now. Maybe high-stake games, pull it back a little bit. But yeah, have fun.
Until the surprise factor wears off a little bit and it becomes a bit too predictable on that side. Now, Emily, which level 1 are you bringing to the table?
So I am looking at Evil Geniuses versus Golden Guardians, and in a defensive fan, which is typically what people do if you're not running a level 1, so the majority of the time, you are going to have your top laner somewhere in topside river or in the topside red side tri-brush, like where Niles is here. The big important thing here is that as we zoom in, is we're going to see Impact come around for a flank on the Sylas. This is something that he can do on Sylas specifically, and it also makes sure that Niles can't really escape from this as well, because then, as you see, he goes over the wall with his chains. And the big thing is that Svenskeren gets the kill, which means he comes back to his first clear with boots and a pink and just absolutely beasts through this entire clear, where Udyr is already kind of broken, as we've seen. He gets a double scuttle. He's like zooming around the map already. It just sets them so far ahead. And I think this is just a really good example of how far ahead that level 1 can set you, and also the impact it can have immediately on your early game. Like, there's no way Svenskeren should be zooming around on Boots 1 for his first clear, but he is here.
Right. Niles, you're a bit newer to the LCS. I know people are ragging on you and not knowing things. I have one hint of advice here. When you're sitting in that bush, sit at the far back of it, as far north or up as you can. Because if you stood farther back, that level 1 wouldn't have worked, even though it was cheesy. You'd be sitting at the very far brush. You see them walking. You can just walk straight up to your tower. That 1 and 1.5 seconds it took you to move from the middle bush to the end of the bush once you saw them is what gets you killed. So good level 1. Now stand in a better spot, and you won't get punished. You might have to start E or flash, but at least you won't die. So.
I don't know if there are any TikTok users out there, but if you watch that bit back and you play the sound that's oh no, during when it's over on the tri-brush, it really is worth it. Encourage you to do that sometime soon. But I think we got another one here to round out our level 1s.
Yeah, kind of keeping on the theme of things you can do a little bit better. It's FlyQuest versus CLG. I just love CLG's level 1s. I'll always keep talking about them. They're the best part of their game right now. Here, Smoothie kind of brush baits as just this Alistar a little bit too far forward. The Make It Rain slow baits them into thinking they can get a chunk or maybe a summoner, but the rest of CLG is again baiting in that brush. And what you'll notice is, once again, Finn is down here. And there was actually a question mark ping on mid lane from FlyQuest to notice that the mid laner for CLG, RJS, was not standing at his spot. This is to Emily's earlier point about how most teams go into this defensive fan formation where they're going to be covering all points into your side of the map. And as soon as you notice someone not there, that means something is up. That means there's some whack stuff going on, FlyQuest. And so don't just chase this Alistar blindly into the river. And I think this is something that a lot of teams can learn a little bit more of, is anytime you notice anything out of the ordinary other than the classic point defense, you have to be ready for some cheese like that.
Do you think it's one of the scenarios where, since everyone's playing at home right now, Jose Diodo forgot that this isn't a solo queue game and instead it's an LCS game? Because, you see one person, he eases into the river. What are you going to do? Do you get one auto and then what? What's the play after that? The only thing that can happen is something bad. You gain literally nothing for doing that. And it's something that people do in solo queue, sure. But, it's an LCS game, buddy. Maybe you shouldn't do that.
Chunk the Alistar. It's worth it.
Yeah.
Solo queue games, LCS games, either way, if the level 1 is going to make feeders of your foes, then it's a good choice to be had. And speaking of all of these level 1s, it is getting me hungry for some good games. So let's take a look at the schedule for today. Game 1 has Dignitas looking to take a game off of TSM, who are on a hot streak. And we got a rematch of our lock-in final, Team Liquid versus Cloud9 in Game 4, before Evil Geniuses versus CLG to close out the weekend. And if you have been tuning in to what we've had so far, you know that we are in for a wild ride. But looking ahead to game number 1, we have one of the most historic supports in the LCS facing off against one of the most historic supports in the world. So to get a reminder of Sword Art's epic journey to TSM, here's Sword Art Oversimplified.
2020 Worlds finalist and recent addition to the LCS, Sword Art has a storied history and a lot of hype at the start of the 2021 season. Get to know the Taiwanese talent in Sword Art Oversimplified. Sword Art debuted in the LMS in 2012 as the mid laner for AHQ Amateur, before joining Defenders in 2013, where he made the switch to support. After a few months, Sword Art moved on to the Gamania Bears, where his initial transition proved tricky. The roster struggled to get results, but soon enough, Sword Art found his place and his voice on the team as a shot caller and mood maker. He found his next home on Flash Wolves, where he remained for several years and fostered a roster defined by strong early game stomps and friendship. While Flash Wolves struggled early on after his addition, Sword Art brought balance to the mechanically gifted but at times overly aggressive Karsa and Maple. With Sword Art's shot calling and Karsa's incredible skill, Flash Wolves famously took down tournament favorites SKT at MSI and Worlds 2016, earning themselves the nickname the Korean Killers.
They're here, Cardin's here! Oh my lord, he gets it! He stole the Baron away, and SKT starts coming apart at the seams!
But were never quite able to translate that success to an international title. His friendship and development with the Flash Wolves team would prepare him for his next step into the LPL with Su Ning, where he helped refine players like Juan Fong, a gifted rookie who blossomed in his time with Sword Art, translating to an underdog run to the 2020 Worlds Finals.
Pentakill for Bin and Su Ning Gaming in the World Championship Final!
Pantheon looking for an ulti top.
Here we go. They won the bottom side. They're going to win this one. TSM are marching towards perfect game pace right now. Perk's going to have to be careful. Good stun by Sword Art. There's the combo. There's an Elysian.
And that's all you need to know in Sword Art Oversimplified.
Mood maker. That's now one of my favorite phrases. Thanks, Riv. We're going to be seeing more from Sword Art in just a few minutes when he takes on Aphromoo and Dignitas. But Emily, we do need to revisit his performance yesterday that we begun talking about a bit earlier, and what can happen when Sword Art is absolutely unleashed.
Yeah, the resident Sword Art homer here has arrived.
Yeah.
I think again, I can't stress enough how much better Sword Art is always going to look on a team with stronger communication, right? And so when we were talking about TSM previously, we were like, TSM gets in the game and it looks like all of these players who are all pretty, like, most of them are fairly experienced and have an idea of how they want to play the game, aren't really getting along. Now that the team is communicating a lot better, I think the big thing about TSM now is that Sword Art is going to be able to make plays around the map by communicating with the rest of the team, and that is really where you get a lot more value out of someone like Sword Art. Like, you're not really picking him up for the 2v2 lane. You're really picking him up to make plays around the map.
Yeah, and I think while Sword Art has been maybe the biggest turnaround of improvement, a lot of CSM's playing better. And I think Lost for me has been someone who has really stepped up. He was maligned quite a bit through the lock-in tournament with some bad performances, but through Spring Split has actually been really, really good. And even before they start picking up wins, I think some of his team fights have been pretty good despite still struggling in laning phase. And now finally everything's hitting for Lost, so he's looking a lot better. As well as Huni has taken on a different role for this team. I think we all expect Huni to be the guy who kind of wants to carry quite a bit, but he's taken a back seat to allow other people to get counterpicked. He's blind picked his top matchup in 5 of his 8 games this split, and in particular during this win streak, it's been 4 in a row now that he's done this blind pick. So he has settled into kind of a weak side top laner more so to allow PoE and Sword Art to be more of the focus in the early game.
Right. I believe in an interview, actually, he said that he is happy just chilling, not carrying, because he has a huge carry in Power of Evil. And, like, when you got a guy that will carry the game, if the game is either even or he's a little ahead, come 15, 20 minutes, like, how can you just do your best not to feed? Like, if you know you're going to win because your main lane is just that big of a carry, you're probably going to chill back. The only thing I would say is that, you know, in comparison of PoE to Bjergsen had a lot of different playstyles in his time where he played Akali, Zed, things like that. I do hope that as TSM gets better and better and better, Power of Evil is able to explore other playstyles rather than just being dominant on control mages. If he's able to translate how good he is at control mages to roamers and assassins, he's going to be one of the scariest mid laners North America will bring to Worlds if they make it there.
And to piggyback on that a little bit, I think when you have a mid that is as good as PoE at controlling the mid wave, you can have someone like Huni, who I feel like in the past we've criticized Huni because he goes for these lane counters and stuff like that. You know, to Mark's point, he's been picking a lot of stuff blind, and he's been doing a lot for the team. And one of the more underrated things I think that people sometimes forget to talk about with Huni is that he was always willing to help his team too. Like he was always willing to TP down. Hai talked about previously how important it can be transferring topside priority to have a top laner who's willing to roam mid. Guess what? Huni is also willing to roam mid. So I think as TSM continue to put stuff together, I also want to see PoE and Huni working a little bit more to playmaker around the map as well, because I think that can also be a really interesting and strong combination.
And I mean, from everything you all have said, whether it is Huni saying he's okay to take that back seat, or even Hai, you making the point of what you want to see from PoE, and he himself mentioning that he and Bjerg are learning so much from each other as mid laners. There's a lot to look forward to on their continued development. But Mark, they are facing off against Dignitas here today.
Yeah, Dignitas had a rough go in their previous matchup. C9 definitely jumped all over him with the Tristana. But even beyond just the fact that C9 is a really good team, I think there were some weaknesses that we saw in Dignitas where you had Dardoch with a counter pick that did not work that well into enemy team's comp, as well as the fact that Afro not on a playmaker feels like it really hurts this team. I think there's a natural inclination to go down to bot lane with him being such a vocal part of the team, as well as being so good about playmaking, that when he's on a Tahm Kench, it not only hurts his individual ability, but it hurts the team ability to find advantages in the early game, because that's where they just tend to go. They try to play around Afro, even in situations where their bot lane is not necessarily set up for it.
Yeah, I think Mark is absolutely right in that Dignitas are a lot more comfortable playing around bot side, a lot of because of Afromu's playmaking. And yesterday we saw that they had topside priority and didn't focus it, right? And I also think a huge part of credit should be given to C9's composition, because getting prio in mid with Trist, I mentioned this yesterday, but I really liked the Ashe lane that they did pull out to have a pushing lane down there as well. I think it was a really good response to what Dignitas like to do. And previously I'd said that one of the things I like about Dignitas in the champions they pick is that they still have a really clear-cut idea of how they want to focus around Dardoch. So I'm really curious to see how they recover going forward and if they continue to stick with that playstyle.
Speaking of Dardoch really quickly, I've never played with the guy, so I don't know exactly his comms or what his reasoning is, but like people have been bringing up, he's played what, like 10 different champions or something so far. While that's cool and all, I do think teams have to be strong at the meta, because there is a meta for a reason. Now, I might misquote him here, but I believe in an interview or somewhere he said that, wait, what did he say? I know, I'm going to drop it because I don't want to misquote him, but anyway, I like that he plays different characters, but you want to get strong at the meta too, because in the end, when you start coming to playoffs and worlds and play against stronger teams, playing unique champions is going to only get you so far. You got to be able to play the meta at times too, so.
Yeah, whether they play the meta or not, though, I do have to say it's been quite enjoyable from an audience perspective, trying to see what Dignitas locks in next. I want to get your predictions locked in before we get into the gameplay here today, so let's see what our analysts have got. All right, all the same except for IMT versus Fly. Mark, why do you think that Immortals are going to be the ones to take it?
I feel like I like Immortals' game plan a lot more right now. I think that they have a pretty strong idea of what they want to do with Xerxes and Revenge up on the top side. I think it's really close. I think this is potentially the closest match that we have today right now, but I'm having a feel that it's Immortals right now.
Yeah, I admit that is a pretty difficult one to predict based on their recent performances. But let's go ahead and get into game number one, TSM versus Dignitas. We got Captain Flowers and Crumbs here for the call.